All right, folks, welcome back. It's 2:25, and we have about another half an hour of information that I'd like to share with you. And it's in the form of another video, but I'm not going to show you the whole thing. First, I wanted to kind of give you an overview of kind of the nuts and bolts for the class, just so that everybody can be clear and you all can ask questions as I do that. So let me begin by coming back to this learning unit. So this is a little bit of work in progress, but I just wanted you to sort of be aware of where Chris and I are going with this. So each Tuesday for about 2 hours, from 1 to 3-ish, we'll try and finish around 3, maybe as late as 3:30 in some instances. We'll have this opportunity for a presenter. And then there's a discussion board, and it's an opportunity for you all to share your notes. And I will also share my notes on that if I can figure out how to do that. Or if I can't, then I'll find another way to get my notes to you so that you at least have some of my thoughts about each presenter as well. And then the assignment for each week will be a 1 or 2 page paper, taking the ideas from your notes and for the ideas from other people's notes. And part of the idea of the discussion board is you put your notes on there and then you interact with some of the key ideas from your classmates. So you can borrow ideas and issues from other folks. You could do a little research if you like. Maybe something piqued your interest and you'd like to look a little bit deeper at any of the topics that were raised in Ms. Patterson's interview there. And just write a little 1 to 2 page paper looking specifically at some of the ideas that were addressed in the lecture, and then pointing those towards environmental design issues and topics, and just thinking a little bit in terms of how you might apply some of these things in your work as a landscape architecture student and as a potential future practitioner of environmental design, or whatever it is you're going to do in the future. So that is kind of an overview here, and I just wanted to point out one other thing, that there's this youth and college organizing toolkit for environmental climate justice, and I invite you to download that as well. Okay, so let's see if I can get back to this. Here we are. So what I'm going to do, there is about a 5 or 6 minute presentation of spoken word by a young man who's just does a brilliant job taking a whole bunch of these ideas and putting them into a 5 to 6 minute presentation. And then we're going to listen to about the first 10 minutes of Ms. Patterson's introduction to her program. And then I'm going to flip over to about minute 44 to 45, where she talks about some of the specific things that I think would be of most interest to you. And what I would recommend, and just encourage you to do, is on your own time you could listen to the whole thing as you like, and maybe share it with some of your classmates or friends. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get going here.
Hi, hope all is well with you all. I wish that we were here in person, but it seemed like it would be better for us to make the recording with just me, because when we're all together, the bandwidth is such that it makes it hard to show the great videos that are such a critical part of this presentation. So looking forward to spending this next maybe 45 minutes with you talking about the Environmental and Climate Justice Program of the NAACP and all that it has to offer. First, a little bit of history. The Environmental and Climate Justice Program started in 2009. It started as a result of set of conversations and realizations that happened. First, our then President and CEO, Benjamin Dell, was a part of the commissioned to engage Africans on climate change, and there was a realization amongst that group that they needed an organization that was a base-building organization to advance this engagement goal. And secondly, we signed a memorandum of, we did a joint resolution with the National Wildlife Federation on the disproportionate impact of climate change on African American communities and also on protection and defense of the Clean Air Act. And so from there, the rest is history. We started off with a focus on coal, which evolved into wanting to add the alternative to coal, which is energy efficiency and clean energy, and then also recognizing that the impacts were already being felt of climate change on our communities. And so we added a third objective around adaptation so that our communities were prepared to adapt to those impacts. So without further ado, I am going to show a video because culture work and video has been a big part of the program from the very beginning. Both doing videos to capture and share the voices and leadership of all of you, our frontline leaders. And then secondly, because whether it's spoken word or performance, art or otherwise, it's just such a compelling part of storytelling and such a compelling aspect of our very culture. So I'll be starting out with a spoken word artist named Prince E. And let's see, I'll share screen. Hold on. Let's get him started. I'll share the screen. Oh, no wonder. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go.
Dear future generations, I think I speak for the rest of us when I say, sorry. Sorry we left you with our mess of a planet. Sorry that we were too caught up in our own doings to do something. Sorry we listened to people who made excuses to do nothing. I hope you forgive us. We just didn't realize how special the earth was. Like a marriage gone wrong, we didn't know what we had until it was gone. For example, I'm guessing you probably know it as the Amazon desert, right? Well, believe it or not, it was once called the Amazon Rainforest, and there were billions of trees there, all of them gorgeous, and oh, you don't know much about trees, do you? Well, let me tell you, trees are amazing. I mean, we literally breathe the air they are creating. They clean up our pollution, our carbon. They store and purify water, give us medicine that cures our diseases, food that feeds us, which is why I'm so sorry to tell you that we burn them down. Cut them down with brutal machines, horrific, at a rate of 40 football fields every minute. That's 50% of all the trees in the world gone in the last 100 years. Why? For this. And that wouldn't make me so sad if it weren't so many pictures of leaves on it. You know, when I was a child, I read how the Native Americans had such consideration for the planet that they felt responsible for how they land for the next 7 generations. Which brings me great sorrow, because most of us today don't even care about tomorrow. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we put profit above people, greed above need, the rule of gold above the golden rule. I'm sorry we use nature as a credit card with no spending limit, overdrafting animals to extinction, stealing your chance to ever see their uniqueness or become friends with them. Sorry we poison the ocean so much that you can't even swim in them. But most of all, I'm sorry about our mindset. We had the nerve to call this destruction progress. Hey Fox News, if you don't think climate change is a threat, I dare you to interview the thousands of homeless people in Bangladesh. See, while you were in your penthouse nestled, their homes were literally washed away beneath their feet, rising sea levels. And Sarah Palin, you said that you love the smell of fossil fuels. Well, I urge you to talk to the kids of Beijing who are forced to wear pollution masks just to go to school. See, you can ignore this, but the thing about truth is, it can be denied, not avoided. So I'm sorry, future generations. I'm sorry that our footprint became a sinkhole and not a garden. I'm sorry that we paid so much attention to ISIS and very little to how fast the ice is melting in the Arctic. I'm sorry we doomed you, and I'm sorry we couldn't find another planet in time to move to. You know what? Cut the beat. I'm not sorry. This future, I do not accept it. Because an error does not become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We can redirect this. How? Let me suggest that if a farmer sees a tree that is unhealthy, they don't look at the branches to diagnose it, they look at the root. So like that farmer, we must look at the root and not to the branches of government, not to the politicians run by corporations. We are the root, we are the foundation, this generation. It is up to us to take care of this planet. It is our only home. We must globally warm our hearts and change the climate of our souls and realize that we are not apart from nature, we are a part of nature, and to betray nature is to betray us. To save nature is to save us, because whatever you're fighting for, racism or poverty, feminism, gay rights, or any type of equality, it won't matter in the least. Because if we don't all work together to save the environment, we will be equally extinct. So,
as in the words of Frederick Douglass, without vision, the people perish. And it is true that we must have vision in order to advance the change that we want to see in the world. We also hold that we need to have political education. We need to have research and analysis around policy in order to know how to exact the change that we want. We also recognize that narrative determines so much of what happens. And so we have to command and control the narrative as frontline communities. And we also recognize that localism, being able to have community ownership and control of the systems that provide commons, whether it's energy, food, water, is critical. We also recognize that in order to exact change, we have to be able to, again, have the vision to see the possibilities. And for us, we help to uplift where there are communities that are fulfilling the vision so that we can inspire other communities to also follow in such pathways, because so much of our existence has been fighting against assaults that it makes the sight line in terms of a vision for communities that are not only surviving but are actually thriving. It makes it a little blurry because it's obscured by the oppression and the systematized ways of making us seem like our possibilities are limited when really they're limitless if we have the vision and if we push for it. So that is the theory of change. Those are the assumptions we already talked about. This is what our theory of change looks like kind of in the graphic. It talks about the problems that we're existing under, whether it's racism, poverty, the stolen democracy, and then our own focus around pollution and climate change and the strategies, including what we just talked about, vision, political education, organizing and power building, narrative shift, localized systems, and then advancing transformative policy and practice. We talked about some of the groups that we have specific programming around. We have our Rural Electric Co-op initiative, our Gender and Climate Justice initiative, and so forth and so on. And then some of our short-term outcomes are at the very least just having policies and regulations around clean air, clean water, healthy food, and so forth. But our long-term access is to actually have kind of quality of all the basic things that we need for life, as well as community ownership and control, sovereignty, and self-determination. So in the ultimate impact that we want is a living economy that embodies caring, cooperation, regeneration, and deep democracy, thereby uplifting Earth rights and human rights for all. So these are just our program components, which are built around those components of our theory of change. And our vision, core vision, is to advance the leadership of frontline communities to eliminate environmental and climate injustices and ignite an environmental, social, and economic revolution. Our three objectives, as hopefully most of you know, which are to reduce harmful emissions, particularly greenhouse gases, to advance energy efficiency and clean energy policies and practices, and to strengthen community resilience in the context of climate adaptation. So just to give you a sense of some of the detail, these are some of the projects and products under each of these objectives. So our Cold-Blooded campaign, which started in 2010, and it seeks to eliminate coal burning in our communities. This is our Cold-Blooded action toolkit, actually, to change that. But so it's our Cold-Blooded report and action toolkit is what that's supposed to say. But it actually guides us through the whole process of assessing the community's relationship with coal plant and then helping to move us past coal burning, but not just pushing back coal burning, but advancing energy efficiency, clean energy, and so forth. So another video, so hopefully transition will be smoother than before. We'll see. Stop share.
Authority is the people. The people are the ones being excluded and uprooted.
So $5,000 is to help with that either. For communities that want to do what's more concerned about its profits, a company where the CEO is making millions of dollars every year, and yet they not only cut off their streetlights, but they took the street poles away. But this is the power of community leadership and self-determination, that they didn't let that stop them, that they continue on and develop their own source of energy through solar. So it's a beautiful thing. So our third objective is, as I said.
Sorry, I'm skipping around here, but I was trying to get to a couple of key examples that she was giving.
As it relates to energy efficiency and clean energy work. So we also have launched a energy justice certification program. We began to have energy justice trainings in 2016, and now we have a certification program to help folks to move along the path to reach where Joanne Hardesty reached, really. She was one of the same person I told you about in Portland, Oregon. She was one of our inaugural class of the energy justice program in 2016, June of 2016. It's our 4-year anniversary, I guess, of launching that initiative. And after she went through that program, she went on to be at the helm of that Portland Clean Energy Fund, and now she's in the city council. And we have other folks, Oswego Gates, who is right here in this picture. He is to the right there, and he also went on to do work in his community and is now also an elected official. We had another person, Lewis Harris, who also went on to do work in his community and is now an elected official in Washington State. Similarly, well, there's many folks. Another person, Jocelyn Travis, who you actually saw in the video when talking about Cleveland. She went on to be an excellent ECJ chair and did a lot of work over the years that put her in touch with a number of organizations, one of whom is employing her now full time. She's a great leader now in her state and region with the Sierra Club Beyond Coal campaign. And so the work that folks have done in being involved in this training has really evolved into amazing work, visibility, elected office, jobs, and so forth. So again, just another great reason to do this work in addition to the great ways that it serves the community, first and foremost as the aim. So another part of this is that we do these summits called Bridging the Gap, Connecting Black Communities to the Green Economy. And the idea of these summits is to really help to showcase the possibilities in the green economy. We know that the solar industry is one of the top 10 growing industries in this country. Their wind turbine technicians is the #1 growing job in this country. And so there are lots of opportunities in the new energy economy because our energy economy in general is a $6 trillion industry. And as we make the shift to clean energy and greater energy efficiency, that is an economy that we can be poised to have ownership, stake, and leadership roles in if we position ourselves now as it's emerging. So our inaugural Bridging the Gap convening was in 2013 in Washington, D.C. as a pre-conference to the Good Jobs, Green Job Conference that used to happen annually and was held by the Blue Green Alliance. We put out this report a couple of years ago called Lights Out in the Cold, Reforming Utility Shutoff Policies of Human Rights Matter, out of response for the concern that we had for folks who were literally paying the price of poverty with their lives. They would get their electricity shut off. They would use candles to light their homes. And we know candle fires are one of the biggest ways that fires happen. And that also another biggest way that fires happen are space heaters. So people will get their oil and gas cut off and use space heaters, and they've lost their lives as a result. And onwards. So we really wanted to call out the criminality of that versus this notion of criminalizing poverty by shutting people off from necessary resources. We also, speaking of called out the fossil fuel industry for the ways that they have manipulated our democracy, manipulated our communities, and so forth. So we put out this report last year, April 1st, called Fossil Fuel Foolery, an illustrated primer on the top 10 manipulation tactics of the fossil fuel industry. And then just this past January, we saw that same report get another bit of highlighting thanks to the work and leadership of the Florida NAACP, where the Florida president and the conference stood behind her in denouncing funding from the fossil fuel industry and said that they weren't going to be pressured, by these companies to do their will so that they can receive money from them. It's another video that I will show you.
Our latest problem is the removal of the street lights, which basically put us in the dark.
Wasn't funding in the city, and VT came in and cut the lights out, which was a tragic thing because, when you deal in the inner city, you deal with a lot of crime. You can't walk up streets at night. So that leaves people open to get robbed.
Took away our quality of life. I understood that money was owed, and our city being strapped for funds as we are, that's what had to be done. But just like water, we need light too. We need to see. We need to feel secure. If, for whatever reasons, city government cannot make that happen, I believe that the people should be self-sufficient enough to do it for themselves.
It was sort of in response to the situation that Solidarity came to be. We realized that we needed to light the streets, that with solar power we would never pay an electrical bill again. With solar power we could do this in a way that was responsible and safe for the rest of the world. And with solar power we can have the community actually own and plan and develop the street lights.
We need lights. Why complain when you can do it yourself?
And instead of waiting for someone to do it or come in and do it, we can do it ourselves at a less cost.
Okay, so that's a bit longer. You should definitely feel free to check that out. Great work that was being done by the Solidarity Campaign to advance their own self-determination, sovereignty, and ownership, because once again, this was a situation where they were cut off from the resource of light by a heartless company that was more concerned about its profits, a company where the CEO is making millions of dollars every year, and yet they not only cut off their streetlights, but they took the street poles away. But this is the power of community leadership and self-determination, that they didn't let that stop them, that they continued on and developed their own source of energy through solar. So it's a beautiful thing. So our third objectives, as I said before, is strengthening community resilience in the context of climate adaptation. So we do everything from providing training and joint strategizing and planning grants in particular for communities that want to do multiple projects all at once. It's comprehensive resilience planning. So it's everything from local food projects to water security to transit equity to stormwater management and onwards. Is there equity? So the idea is for the planning grants is for communities who want to do multiple things, not just a community that just wants to do food justice or just wants to do disaster equity. It's a community that says, okay, we want to really take this on and develop either an eco village or a transition town or an eco district or a kind of a comprehensive community model. And the planning grant is solely for planning, for either convening folks to have planning sessions, but the outcome of the planning grant is to have a consensus process, which will have involved doing stakeholder engagement with all the different folks who have a stake in a comprehensive community plan, and to make sure that we have as many people, individuals from the community involved in that process as well. So the $5,000 is to help with that, either whether it's paying for food or paying for Zoom in this new COVID reality. But that's the idea. And so we developed, to help to guide some of these processes, we developed a adaptation planning tool that provides a number of indicators for determining if a community is resilient in the context of climate adaptation. We also put out this toolkit about how to actually build a resilient community. So it actually helps in terms of that planning process. It gives some ideas about steps to get there. And we include everything from land use planning to coastal resilience to local food projects. And it's still a 500-page document, so there's lots of possibilities. But we also broke it up into individual modules so you can have it in kind of more bite-sized chunks. These are just some of the models: eco-villages, eco-districts, and so forth. This is some of the work we've done around disaster equity and disaster management. One thing we just released too is our equity in emergency management certification program, where we would walk you through how many hours is it? 12 hours of initial training for the first tier of the program, which is Disaster Equity Apprentice. It's about 4 hours of online training for the second phase, and then it's multiple action projects that one would have to implement to become a disaster equity practitioner. And then the third is another maybe 3 hours of online training, and then multiple projects to implement to then get the badge of Disaster Equity Guardian. So it's a pretty rigorous and robust project, but on the other side is great benefit for self and for community. So we invite you to be engaged. And that's another place where there's not only the fulfillment of doing the work with your community and really resulting in a much more equity-based disaster resilient community, but secondly, there are a lot of employment and leadership opportunities in the disaster space, sadly, because we are seeing this increase in the frequency and severity of extreme weather events and other types of disasters, including COVID-19. So if one is looking for a career or a second career, this is definitely another option as well. So this is just some of the great planning projects and implementation. So in the upper right-hand corner is planning, and in the lower left-hand corner and the picture on the left, the two pictures on the left, general implementation, where the Gulfport project did a lot of planning, and then they developed a multi-site community gardens project, and they had a master gardener who trained all these apprentices in the community, and they are working this land through these raised bed gardens. So it's beautiful. Same here in Florida, Gulfport, Longview, Texas, doing great projects. The Longview project. And then also sometimes we work with communities who are doing projects from scratch, and other times we're working with communities who are there might already be a climate action plan in the making, and we just want to make sure that there's equity integrated into it. So we talk about how we do it from scratch, and then how do we do an intervention on an existing plan. This is one of our star ECJ chairs who got in there with the municipality of Anchorage and ended up being the co-chair of their advisory committee for the development of the Anchorage Climate Action Plan. She was there from beginning to ratification, worked on a series of community consultation projects. I was there and sat down with them at one point. We talked about the equity analysis and what needed to be included, including, everything from measures to address homelessness in the plan and otherwise. So because of Bessie, it was a much more equity-based plan, and because of her leadership, we had real community inclusion and leadership. Another toolkit we put out in the Eye of the Storm Action Toolkit. So I talked about the Equity and Emergency Management project or certification program, and this is really kind of the companion guide to being able to implement all the projects and practices that I talked about as part of the certification program. So this is another quick video I'll show you.
My name is 103444.
This, in addition to the certification, ACP are really pushing emergency management. So the Florida State our emergency stage, flooding risk, and healing justice project. We have this intersections document that looks at the intersections between environmental and climate justice and all the NAACP game changers, from health to economics to criminal justice, civic engagement, and so forth. We wrote this article back in 2017, diversity is not enough, and done alone it can be counterproductive. And we're certainly seeing that today, where we're looking for recognition that we can't just kind of diversify, we have to be explicitly anti-racist in order to begin to root out the deep, systemic, virulent racism in our society. Similarly, we wrote this document to help folks to understand what it looks like to be led by communities and some of the challenges that have sort of surfaced with communities working with big green organizations or others who don't recognize what it's like to be in allyship, what it's like to be led by communities on the front line. So we help to write some tips in this document and continue to do trainings and help folks to understand the ways to work that. And we want to start them young. We wrote this document to work with the National Education Association and others to to help teachers to know how to do programming that combines environmental sciences, social studies, because we all know that environmental issues are inextricably connected with social justice, as we know only too well. And again, speaking of youth leadership, we have put together this Youth and College Organizing Toolkit, which talks about the very same, objectives that we talked about how youth can really play a critical leadership role in advancing those efforts and initiatives. And to that end, at the UN climate talks in Paris, we had a youth delegation that went, and we linked up with the HBCU Climate Consortium, and together we did a Black Lives Matter die-in in December of 2015, really acknowledging the moment that we were in as a nation then, which for us isn't just a moment, it's our lives, but a moment of recognition that was happening around the nation and that we've had a resurgence around now. But in this, it was really calling out the intersections between whether it's racial profiling and police brutality, or it's our communities dying a death of 1,000 cuts by the assaults of corporatocracy and its polluting impacts on our communities. It's the same system and same disregard for our lives. And so the youth really made that point clearly and stridently at the UN climate talks there. And so we launched this initiative centering equity in the sustainable building sector, and that really looks at how do we make sure that as these green buildings start to proliferate, these LEED Platinum, LEED Gold, these certified buildings, how do we make sure we, who are most likely to be in the least energy efficient buildings, most likely to be in the least disaster resilient buildings, most likely to be in the sickest buildings, whether it's radon or lead or asbestos, how do we make sure that we are, as these green buildings and sustainable buildings advance, that they are another luxury that's afforded by the wealthy few while we continue to languish in these toxic environments. How do we prioritize frontline communities for having healthy environments where we live, work, and play? So we launched that initiative in 2018 in August, and it continues robustly. So we invite you all, again, to be a part of this initiative as well. We have multiple working groups, and we'd love for you to join any of the working groups.
To the auto industry churning out sleepy sedans, we have a brief.
Okay, so I just wanted to quickly show you that this is the Youth and College Organizing Toolkit, and I hope you'll please download it and take a look at it, see what kinds of ideas are in there that might be of some benefit to you, or maybe the ASLA student chapter. Think in terms of ways you could take some of these ideas and apply them to your time here at the university, but also beyond that. And with that, I think we're going to just end now, and I wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to ask any questions before we sign off, and or make any comments about what you've seen today.
So I just saw the assignment number 2. When did that go up?
The paper?
Yes.
Yeah, that was last week. Chris and I sat down and we were thinking in terms of how could we provide an opportunity for you all to take a set of notes and then just write a very short 1 to 2 page paper that would start to express some of your ideas about how to begin to apply those things. So
Okay.
So those will be due in a week. Essentially, you'll get a week to post your notes on the discussion board and then interact with one another and then write a little one-page paper.
Okay. 'Cause I totally missed that last week. Then.
It was not there last week, Dave.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
You know, the issue was that what I told you was that 20% of the grade was attendance, 20% of the grade was the discussion board, and 20% of the grade was a weekly assignment. And Chris said, well, what's the weekly assignment? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I thought you knew that. And so we put our heads together and said, well, it makes sense if we're going to ask you to come to a lecture and as a couple of folks have said, listen to a lot of ideas kind of rumbling around about key issues and topics of our current situation on Earth, that you would take a set of notes, but then you would also use those notes to begin to write a little paper. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, if there's something that really turns your crank and you're like, dang, I want to learn more about that. And I'll just give you one example. When she started talking about that, the eco villages and eco districts, I wanted to know more about that. Like, what is that? And it's, it's a pilot project, right? And they give you $5,000 to do planning work. And I'm thinking, we could do that. Maybe we could get one of these grants. Wouldn't that be awesome? And use that as maybe the collaborative studio next year, or maybe a group of students want to work on some other kind of project. So anyway, to me that's something I'd like to know more about. And my hope is that all of the things that you've heard today, and like I said, I have now like 6 pages worth of notes. So I'll post those, but I hope that each of you will post some of the things that really stood out to you. And then just grab a hold of 1 or 2 of those ideas and do a little research and say, okay, well, here's something that I found. This looks really interesting. I'd like to write a little 1-page paper. It's not so much about your great writing or grammar or anything like that. It's more, what I'm more interested in is that you all wrestle with some of these ideas and try to start to put into your own words how some of these things are resonating with you as an individual or as a student and as a potential future practitioner of environmental design. But any field you go into, it's going to be the same set of issues, right? So my hope is that this is a good kind of foundational set of ideas that you can just kind of learn, like, well, what are some of the key issues and problems that we have as a society, and how do we begin to think about them in creative, strategic ways, so we can, so each of you can, as potential future leaders of our country or our communities, can make a real difference. So that's my hope with all this.
Yeah. Okay. So it'll be due by next week then?
Yes, the idea is you get a week to look back over any of the materials that I've given you links to. You can listen to the presentation again, or I have links to all these things, so you can kind of go back through and sift through what's really important to you, and then just write a quick little paper about it. And then for the midterm, we'll be asking for like a 2 to 3 page paper where you take several of these ideas and put them together. And then for the final, we're just asking for a 3 to 5 page paper. So nothing real huge. It's really just kind of you all beginning to take these ideas and start to put them in your own words and think in terms of how some practical, creative applications to some of these ideas.
Sounds good.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Well,
are we still able to turn in?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Still able to?
Could you
are
say?
We still able to turn in the last paper?
Yes. And I don't even. Yes, you can. And I'm sorry. Chris and I have been a little bit discombobulated with all this, but we will make sure that you have plenty of time to do that. you know, we'll probably give you an extra week or so to go back and look at the notes from the Bill Kearney presentation and write a short paper on that as well. Okay.
Thank you.
And once again, this is not a big deal. This is really just you putting together some of these thoughts and saying, okay, well, this is how I see this connecting up with the whole idea of working in the landscape and in communities to make things better. Okay, well, thank you all. It's been good to be with you, and I look forward to seeing your notes and your papers, and I will make an effort to make sure that all the due dates and everything make sense for all of you. And if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to email me, or you can call me, and I look forward to seeing you all in a week, next Tuesday. So thanks very much, and we'll sign off for now.